Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. All right, folks. Well, you own a business, you own an expert business, and you're working way too hard. And I think the problem is that you're working the business, but you're not the CEO of this business. To help with that, the amazing Racheal Cook from the CEO Collective is here. Rachael, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, David. I know we're going to have such a great conversation about this.
We have a lot to talk about. So first off, please share your professional journey that brought you to the work that you're doing today, and what were some interesting pit stops along the way?
Oh gosh, this is such a long and winding journey. It's kind of like hard to look back and see all the different things I've been through, but I finished my MBA early. I actually graduated college early, was recruited right into my MBA program, and completed that in entrepreneurship and small business management. And while I was doing that, I was also working with the UNC university system. They have different programs, including the Entrepreneurial Initiative, which is all about getting startups funding from local angel groups. And I was in charge of getting those startups selected and ready to pitch for their angel investors. I worked with the North Carolina SBTDC, which is all about small business and technology development coming out of all the universities and things around that. There's a lot of like really cool biotech startups that were happening right at the beginning of the 2000s that I was involved in. And as soon as I graduated, I got recruited into consulting, and I really loved working with small business. But I quickly discovered that consulting in small business was very different than what I thought it would be. I was living out of my suitcase. I was based in Atlanta, but I was driving up and down the East Coast. I was never home. I mean, those weeks are crushing. And anybody who's been in any sort of consulting firm, you don't have to be in one of the biggest ones. They all do this. They are known for the first few years just working those first associates really, really hard. So I burnt out. I ended up with some severe health issues, and I actually had to go on a sabbatical. I had to take a leave of absence. I had to file for short-term disability because my health got so incredibly bad. And so I did what any 20-year-old woman does when you're put on disability for health issues. I found myself on a yoga mat, and I cried on a yoga mat every day for 3 months straight, and became really good friends with my teacher, who basically looked at me and said, Rachael, I know you don't want to go back to that. It's toxic for you. It was killing you. You need something different, but you're not sure what. Do you think you could help me with my yoga studio? And that was such a light bulb moment for me, because while I had been working with small businesses, technically, small business covers a lot, right? And it could cover these multi-million-dollar businesses with hundreds of employees. I mean, I was going into industrial pump manufacturing and machining shops and utility engineering companies, like things that I wasn't personally connected to, but they were small business. And this was that light bulb moment for me where I realized, oh my gosh, there's these really interesting owner-operated small businesses. They don't really have employees. They're pretty much the one owner doing all the things. And they didn't have access to someone like me in the early 2000s. There just wasn't anybody out there who could talk about marketing and sales and finances and operations and just all the different parts of their business. So that really kicked off my journey. And as it often does, like once you start working with one person in a very small niche, suddenly the word got out, and I was working with yoga businesses. I was working with holistic health practices. I was working with functional medicine doctors. So anybody in that holistic health and wellness space was really where I started. And a lot of them had a lot of the same challenges. They were owner operated. They didn't really have a team of employees. So the owner was the one doing the majority of the work, including seeing all the clients, seeing all the patients, or teaching all the classes. And they kept running into the same types of challenges. And so that's kind of where I started. And fast forward, it has been 15 years now. And I've still continued to have a lot of holistic health, a lot of yoga, a lot of non-traditional businesses like that. But I started getting a lot of people come to me who said, Rachael, I'm not in the yoga world. I'm not in the holistic health world, but I really love your podcast, or I took your free Fired Up and Focus challenge and it changed the way I look at what I'm doing in my business. And so I started broadening it out, and we rebranded and relaunched everything as the CEO Collective in 2020, which was literally March of 2020 was when we launched a rebrand that we had worked on for a year and a half.
Who knew, right?
We didn't. We absolutely didn't. But it's been incredible to work with women entrepreneurs, especially the ones who are at this tipping point where they've really been successful in their business in a lot of ways on their own. And now they're ready to step into that CEO role and put in place real infrastructure in their business, get real systems and operations in place, build a team so that they don't have to be the sole person powering this business. And that's where we are today.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Well, let's talk about this niche concept. So it's women business owners. And would you say it's primarily professional services? So people that are, experts, consultants, trainers, coaches, speakers, that sort of niche, or no?
I would say that's kind of my specialty. I love taking someone's experience and expertise and helping them build a business around it. So we have a lot of people who, like I said, are still in the health and wellness space. Yeah. We have a lot of people who are in the professional space. So I've had a lot of lawyers and CPAs and people doing those kind of things, and a lot of creatives. So a lot of people who are designers or photographers, which is really fun. But the core that really brings them all together is they have a really interesting point of view. They have a really great experience to bring to the table. I mean, the women I talk to are some of the most incredible, educated women I've ever met in my life. But the curse of expertise is real. And it actually becomes really hard to market yourself as a business as you build like 20, 30 years of experience. So we tend to help them really figure out what's the through line that can help you make your business really stand out and scale.
One of the things that you teach and talk about a lot is how to really leverage the niche communities and visibility in those niche communities, speaking opportunities in those niche communities. Talk about some of the things that you share with your clients that once they've decided where they want to kind of set up their industry or vertical specialization, how do we really dig into all the opportunities in those niches?
Yeah, I think the idea of a niche is really hard for a lot of people because there's so many ways to approach it, right? But I find that the reason it's so helpful is it makes it super, super clear to the outside person whether or not they're in the right place.
Yeah.
And that's essential because for a lot of us, especially as businesses changed, a lot of us who are expert businesses, we're able to work with people around the world. It's not just people in our local town. And that means the competition is a lot higher. We have to stand out even more. Whereas if you were just, 20 or 30 years ago, just in your town, you might have been the only person there. There wasn't that much competition. So now when we're looking at really narrowing down our focus and our niche, I mean, there's a couple different things that we can focus on. I always start with who's the person you're really here to serve and talk about. This is something that a lot of people are hesitant to do because they think, oh, my work can help everybody. But what ends up happening is in the noise of the online space and the noise of marketing, it kind of gets lost and people get confused about what you do. So I always start with who's your ideal client? And what's amazing is when you talk to that ideal client, there will be outliers who show up. So for example, I have a client who's an incredible chiropractor and her specialty is pre and postnatal moms. We have built her entire marketing around pre and postnatal moms. So does she see people who aren't pregnant or didn't just have a baby? Yes, I go see her all the time now. But when you walk in her office, there's changing table, there's a feeding nook where, they can breastfeed, there's toys for your toddlers. And because she's designed her whole business, the whole client experience is specifically to pre and postnatal moms. One, those people know exactly that they're in the right place. They're not walking into that office going, can you help me? Which is the experience in most other chiropractic offices because they're not tailored to this. The other thing is online, it gives her so much more to talk about. Everything from how do you pick up your baby or how do you make sure you're not hurting yourself if you're nursing? all of these topics now, she can speak so clearly to that audience.
Yeah.
The other part of it that is really amazing is when you get niched down like this, you realize there's a lot of people who are serving that audience and you can collaborate with them. It's not competition, it is collaboration. So in this example, she's actually collaborated with basically anybody who is working with women and babies. If you're a doula, if you're a lactation consultant, if you are a midwife, if you are a nutritionist, if you are anywhere in this space talking to pre and postnatal moms, they all know each other and collaborate all the time. They're always amplifying each other's work. They're hosting workshops together. It's incredible. And it's so much easier to get out there when people are actively recommending you everywhere they turn.
For sure. This brings up another question for you. Obviously, pre and postnatal moms is a B2C kind of business and tapping into that ecosystem. Most of your clients B2C, B2B, is it a mix?
It's a mix.
It's a mix.
It's a mix. Yeah.
So with speaking opportunities, and we were talking about podcasting earlier, which we'll get back into, are there like B2C speaking opportunities? Like if I'm working with, let's go to another example. I'm a realtor, and as a realtor, I help 60 plus couples downsize their home, right? And so we're either selling the house and moving into a smaller house, we're selling the house and moving into some kind of senior living situation. That's my specialty. I'm tapped into all the other senior focused financial advisors, health and wellness people, doctors, gerontologists. Where's the speaking opportunities?
Well, here's the secret. You might have to make them up yourself.
Ooh.
You might just have to make them up yourself because often, in the entrepreneurial space and the business to business space, we have tons of conferences. We have tons of events. We have associations all over the place that we can plug into. So I'm a part of National Association of Women Business Owners. I'm on their speaker list. I can find things through them. I can speak at their conferences, etc. But if you are talking B2C, there might not be as many events like that for you to go to. And one of the things I always teach my clients is if the room doesn't exist, just make the room. Figure it out because you'll be amazed how many people are wanting the information. So if I was that realtor, and because I also have worked with someone like this, helping my parents downsize and all of this, I would be talking to who's their estate attorney? Who's their financial planner? I would be collaborating with these people and I would say, hey, let's put together a series. We can do maybe a dinner series where we bring in education and bring in, something fun for people to do. You'd be amazed how many people say yes to that because they want the information. You just need to create the space. And that's actually not as hard as you might think if you collaborate and can play off of each other's audiences.
Do you love selling? I know, me too. Do you hate selling? I know, me too. Listen, fantastic sales book you got to get your hands on. How do I know? It's mine. That's how. Do It Selling is now available for sale. Grab your copy, grab all the bonuses, all the companion tools, all the training, all the videos that go with it at doitselling.com. See you over there. Well, you have mastered this, I understand, the magic of the one-day event. And this is an in-person event, and there's also a virtual edition of the in-person experience. Talk about what that is in your world and how you came to that formula.
By accident. It was all an experiment, which is how most great things happen, right? You just get an idea. You're like, oh, could this really work? And you run with it, you test it, you see if it works. So what happened for us is I had been really focused 100% virtual in my business for a very long time. I've got 3 kids. They're all teenagers now, but at the time, you got little kids, you're busy. You don't necessarily have time to host events, go to events, etc. But I got to the point where I just really wanted to bring women together in a room in person. And I was starting to get people asking for that. So in 2018, I remember the date specifically, January 12th, 2018, we had just come off of a big free challenge that we run every year, which is Plan Your Best Year Ever for business owners who need to actually come up with an annual plan, come up with their goals. And people are always asking, well, what's my next step? And I was like, oh, well, 90-day planning. I know how to do that. We can do that real easy. So I decided we're going to host a one-day event. We called it the CEO Retreat. And this was really a huge shift for me to go out and find a location, find a space. We ended up with 55 women in the room. They flew in from all around the country and Canada to attend this one-day event. And as soon as it was over, I was just, you know how you have those days where you're just like, oh my God, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is my calling. It was one of those days. Like you just feel so emotional because you're like, I can't believe all these people showed up for this and traveled for this. But then they all said, are we doing it again next quarter? And that was when I knew we were going to continue. So we have hosted over 60 CEO retreats. We host them every single quarter. The only time we didn't have in person was for 18 months right in the middle of COVID. And as soon as we could bring them back, we did. But what I discovered was, especially in my business, I had been hosting and working with people in groups. So I have a group coaching program in the CEO Collective. Most people work with me through and they work with our team of coaches. But I was really feeling like there was that little something missing. And that something missing is the community aspect, the feeling of connection. But when you get people in a room for a day, amazing things happen. Like those connections really solidify. The relationships kind of accelerate. So we started really seeing that the results just amplified because now people weren't feeling so isolated. Women who were maybe on the other side of a Zoom call feeling like they're the only one with this issue. Now they're sitting at a table saying, here's what I'm going after this quarter, and here's where I've been stuck. They're getting direct feedback from people saying, oh my gosh, go for it. Or if they're, feeling hesitant to increase their prices, or they're feeling hesitant to take on this new project, they were looking at other women who could see them and say, you should absolutely do this. This is what you have to do. And that's a different level that they were all getting out of it. So I really believe in-person events are one of the biggest things you can do as a small business owner is build community. And it's really easy to think community is just the number of followers you have on social media or on your email list or whatever. But community is when something happens and those women all know how to call each other. They're all really connected. They're forming their own informal mastermind groups. They're supporting each other. They're collaborating. They're hiring each other. That happens when you help give them literally the space to build those relationships.
Is the one-day event self-contained, or does the one-day event sort of naturally lead into the 90-day coaching program?
Yep. It's actually become the cornerstone of the CEO Collective. The CEO Collective is a 12-month program, but it's built around this 90-day process we go through. So at the CEO Retreat, we help people take their annual goals, break them down into 90-day goals, and really, by the end of it, they walk away with a week by week, here's my top 3 must-dos each week so that they can stay accountable for it. Then they can upgrade into the CEO Collective, where now they have access to my entire team. They have a one-on-one accountability coach. They have live co-working. They have access to all of our content and training. And then each week I do laser hot seat coaching with everyone. But it becomes the perfect for anyone who's wanting to maybe piggyback off of this. I have to say, it's the easiest way to sell something. No lie. Because now if I have people who just sign up for the CEO Retreat, which is, we offer it both to our clients and people who aren't working with us yet, now they're at a table with a bunch of people who've been working with me for a year or two.
Yeah.
I don't have to pitch anything. And I don't. This is not an event I host where there's some big pitch at the end. Yeah. Literally at the end, they're going, how do I sign up for the collective? And I'm like, flip to the back of your workbook. There's the link and the code right there. And they sell themselves because they're realizing the caliber of women in the room and the level of work that's happening.
Well, let's talk about some marketing and visibility sorts of things. Right before we turned on the microphones, we were sort of, comparing notes, a little bit of commiserating about the podcast world. So you have an amazing podcast. You've been doing it since 2016. This thing has taken off pretty well that we're listening to right now. We're a top 1% global podcast. It's a heck of a lot of work. And what do you feel is the balance between podcast hosting? So you're obviously a masterful host, and I'm just doing the best I can over here. And you're also on a lot of podcasts like you are right now. I'm also a guest on a lot of podcasts. Yep. And you sort of balance, well, gosh, host, guest. Where's the ROI? Where should I focus my time and energy if you're not quite at Rachael level or David level quite yet? Is it worth starting your podcast, or is it better to really kind of penetrate all the niche podcasts that your prospects are tuned into?
I have to say, I love podcasting. I'm a long form content type of person. Like when I have something to say, I can break it out into a whole series of things that I want to talk about. So for my podcast, it's primarily a solo podcast. I bring on guests occasionally. I feature my clients often because they are living, breathing case studies and they share about the work that we've done together. But at this point, I have so many episodes. I could rerun our podcast without repeating an episode for about 2.5 years. And I started to really look at it as this is an asset for me. I want my podcast to be an asset that works for me all the time. So I made sure that all the episodes we were recording were as evergreen as possible so that if I need to take a break, if I'm working on another big project, I can press pause and step back. So actually, David, the last 6 months, I have not put out a single new episode. These are all repurposed episodes that we've previously shared. But I figured if Guy Raz can do it for how we built it, then I can too. And what that frees me up to do now is to go on other people's podcasts. So I use these in 2 phases. I find podcast listeners love finding other people's podcasts through listening to podcasts. So one of my biggest attract strategies is podcast guesting. And I probably do about 50 interviews a year on podcasts because it's such an easy way to get in front of brand new people. And then if they like what I have to say, they like my vibe, they come check out my show. My show is where we really nurture them and then convert them into the next thing. So they kind of serve 2 different purposes. When I'm guesting, I'm getting in front of brand new audiences. I'm just kind of giving them a little taste of who I am, what I'm up to, and how I might be able to support them. But then if they go check out my show, they're going to find that we run series of content. So every month there's a new series, 4 to 5 episodes around a very specific topic. So I'm giving them 4 to 5 hours of really intensive content, education, training, things that are going to make them think differently. And they all feed right into what we're doing at the CEO Collective. So I made sure that journey was as smooth as possible so that when people find me, they binge listen to the podcast. I know they do because they tell me. And then they come and convert into becoming clients in some way very easily.
Wow, really great strategy. I'm curious, when you say your podcast leads them to the investable opportunities, I want to ask about that here in a minute. Are we talking like directly, there's little commercial inserts, or you simply, seed and mention a client or the program or the next quarterly, CEO retreat? Is it subtle? Is it not subtle? Is it pretty much in your face? And how does that work?
It's a mix. We definitely do ads. And I have to say, we moved our whole podcast over to Buzzsprout because of their ability to do dynamic ads, which is amazing. Like the moment we're recording right now, I just uploaded a new dynamic ad for a new series, training series that I'm about to run that leads into the next enrollment cycle for the CEO Collective. Yeah. So that's great because then I can always put the things that are time sensitive up through dynamic ads and it can show on the pre-roll, the post, or mid-roll, whatever. Really easy to do. The content itself, though, I always think of my content as little on-ramps. So there's a lot of things we talk about in the CEO Collective. We talk about marketing and sales. We talk about planning. We talk about your vision and your values. We talk about CEO leadership. We talk about team. So in the podcast, I use those as kind of my content buckets, and I build out series around each of those podcast buckets. So right now, the podcast is running a whole Like a CEO series, which is all about how do you really step into that role of CEO? How do you promote yourself to CEO? What is your role as CEO as you're bringing more people into your team? What are some of the mindset challenges that come up as you're a CEO? And all of that folds so perfectly, like it leads perfectly into learning more about the CEO Collective. So it doesn't have to be a big, hard pitch. I'm just naturally leading people there because I'm talking about the exact topics that we help people with in the work that we do. And I'm planting those seeds by referencing our clients, by bringing our clients on as case studies and sharing what worked for them. And by just talking about it, it becomes a really organic way for people to, one, hear about what I do. This is a big thing I think a lot of podcasters miss is they don't talk about their products or services or offers. They just kind of cross their fingers and hope that people are going to maybe click off and look at their website. Podcast, y'all, they don't do that. They might look at the show notes on the podcast app, but it's very rare that people are listening to a podcast and going to your website. So you have to plant the seeds. You have to be very explicitly clear about the name of your offer, about what the process is, about how they can get more. Otherwise, like, they're just going to say, thanks for the great free content and move on with their day.
Oh my gosh. So much gold right there. Tell us, what are the various, because we've mentioned a couple of them. Now it's our time to get intentional. Give us all the different investable opportunities in Rachael Cook world and CEO Collective world. What's the first thing? What's the next thing? What's the big thing? What do your biggest, longest term clients invest in?
I mean, if you're interested in coming to check out what we do, head over to the ceocollective.com/hello. It'll give you a direct link into our latest training series, which is the 90-Day CEO Sustainable Success series, a 4-part series that I'm about to make a paid series, but right now it's free. That's all about our research-backed, client-proven approach to sustainably scaling small businesses. And it's about doing it in a way that is manageable, that helps you buy back your time and reclaim your life, feel more in control of your business, which is what I think a lot of us really want, is to have a business that works for us instead of us feeling like we're constantly hustling for our business. So that's the first step, is to go check out that free series. Then we host a quarterly CEO retreat, that one-day planning event. It is both an in-person option. Come visit me here in Richmond, Virginia. We have such a great time. Or you can do it virtually. I always have a virtual option available because I know life has different things for everybody. So if it's more accessible for you to do that from home virtually, that's also available. And if you really want to dive in, the CEO Collective is where it's at. It's our 12-month program where we work hand in hand, shoulder and shoulder with you to implement your growth framework into your business, get your system, strategy, and support team in place so that you aren't the only one moving your business forward. And instead, you have a full support team behind you, keeping things moving forward, and even more important, allowing you to really enjoy your life while you're growing your business.
And I'm guessing when you say 12-month program, it's designed as a 1-year experience, but people renew, people stay, people upgrade, they keep going, yes?
We have people who stay for up to 4 years now. Like, we've had people who've stayed with us since the very first time we opened it, which is absolutely incredible. And the longer you're with us, the more value we add in different masterminds, different calls, different levels of support for people who continue to renew with us. But we do find that for us, a lot of the next level leadership work has to happen in community. You have to know you're not alone. You have to know you're not the only one facing this stuff. You know, they say it's lonely at the top. And I think anybody who runs a small business, it's often really hard to find people in your world. Like, maybe your spouse isn't a business owner. Maybe your best friends or your family aren't business owners. It's really easy to feel isolated, like you're the only one dealing with these challenges. But we have found so much that when we come together in community, we're able to move faster together because you now have a whole group of people who see who you are and what you have to offer and really hold you to your highest level.
Hey, if you're loving this episode as much as I am, pop over to doitmarketing.com/manifesto and get your free 37-page download guide to how to sell smarter, sell more easily, sell more often. That's what we're here to help you with at The Selling Show. Off you go. Well, I want to dig into this because I think some folks listening have programs like this, right? They have group coaching programs, they have cohort-based mentoring of some kind. And I know that a really big problem that they're facing is this whole retention and renewal, right? It's hard enough to get clients. And then when you have this churn, it just kills you because now you have to go out and refill the bucket all the time, but your revenue stays the same. So what are some of your secrets to retention? What kind of environment do you create where retention, like people are afraid to leave, they would never leave, they couldn't imagine running their business without being part of the CEO Collective? Talk to us about retention.
Oh my goodness. I actually have a whole framework that I teach about how we make this happen. And it's based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I know people have heard about. It's a really common framework, but not many people actually know how to apply it to anything. So when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which was actually developed, Maslow kind of borrowed it, we'll say generously, from the Blackfoot Nation. This is all about how you get all of your different levels of needs met. And when all the different levels of needs are met by an individual, they feel like they belong, right? And belonging is what we really want. If all people are doing is joining your program, but they don't feel like they belong there, they are not going to stay. So there's a couple things we can do. The first level is all of the physiological, psychological comfort needs, right? People need to feel like they are taken care of. And I am always amazed when people say, I'm having a hard time retaining. There's so many business owners who are really great at marketing and sales, but they're terrible at client experience. And one of the biggest areas you can miss is these comfort needs, these physiological needs that people have when they join your program. You need to make them feel taken care of from the moment they join. You need to have such a clear onboarding process. If you are having people sign up and then they're going, well, what's next? And they're emailing you asking a million questions, it's because your onboarding sucks. Like there's no way around it. It's just terrible. So you need to make sure that you keep asking yourself, what's the next step? Once they sign up, they've registered, they've paid, what happens next? And then what happens? And how will they get access to the thing they need to get access to? Is there a onboarding module? Is there something letting them know, what are the guidelines here? What are our values here? How can I interact? How can I get support? You want to answer all of those questions and make it really easy for them. So that's the first level, is comfort needs. Are those needs being met? The second level are communication needs. And this is another area I see a lot of small businesses really struggle. They assume that people know everything. But the reality is, you've been around long enough, you realize they don't read the whole sales page, they don't read the FAQs, they don't read every email. You find yourself getting questions all the time. So you actually have to repeat yourself a whole lot more than you think is reasonable. But what happens is, if you are clearly communicating, even over communicating, people understand the expectations, they understand the boundaries, they understand this is what's included, this is not what's included. They get reminders. They understand like, oh, here's the schedule of all the things going on in this group. If you're not reminding them about those events or telling them how to RSVP for those events, telling them how to submit questions for those things, they're going to be confused. And if they're confused, they're going to be dissatisfied. And even worse, confused mind says no. Confused mind goes into, this was a bad idea. I'm not getting what I need out of this. So communication needs are the next thing. It's all about expectations, boundaries, reminders, being really, really, really consistent. And this is where you build in like that social safety. If you can take care of those first two things, if you can take care of their comfort needs, everything is easy to access, you've made it really easy to navigate, and you've set up the communication needs, that's the foundational. That's like 101 container building. The next piece is belonging. Okay. And belonging is a little bit harder because this is the not scalable stuff often. And I find people are really fast to say, well, how can I automate this? And you know what? You can't automate relationships. You just can't. People can tell. But if you have a system set up where you're checking in with people, you're sending personalized notes, you're actually interacting with them, they're going to feel like they belong. There are a lot of groups out there where the person who's running the group, the business owner, does not even know the name of their clients. And that is a shame because those people feel like they are a number. They do not feel like they belong. They really start to dissociate from that. So people feel like they belong when they show up to my CEO retreat and there's questions like, hey, how's your mom doing? Hey, how was that trip I know you just went on? That's belonging. That's when you actually have real relationships. People know who you are. They know what's going on with you. They know challenges you might be going through. You have to be intentional about that. And it's not the stuff that is, quote unquote, scalable or able to be automated. It is the stuff that takes time. And this is one reason we keep a smaller community. There's a lot of research that shows that once you get beyond about 250 people, it's very hard to have a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to get to know that many people. So I'm a big fan of having very intentionally sized community so that we can prioritize this.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the beginning of that Maslow's hierarchy. The final part is kind of combined a little bit. It's the esteem and the self-actualization. And this is what happened. Once people feel safe, they have that psychological safety, they feel like they belong, then they are open to doing something new. If people don't feel safe and they don't feel like they belong, guess what? They're not going to implement anything you're talking about because their brain is going to have to work so hard to convince them this is a good idea. They already don't feel safe. So when you have set that foundation, then you can get them into the learning zone. Then they can start trying out these ideas that you're giving them, this content that you're giving them, the training you're giving them, and they start building this confidence competence loop. They become more competent as they take action. They build their confidence as they get better at it. And the more consistent they are, the more the results start to show up. And to layer on top of that, that's when you layer in your best coaching, right? You're giving them great feedback. You're seeing their commitment to progress, not perfection. And they're really willing to go all in on taking action. But that's only ever going to happen if you've helped establish a community that feels safe for them, where they feel like they belong as an actual individual, not just as a number on your stripe.
Absolutely. And this is, we could have a whole show about this, and hint, hint, maybe we should. Last question on this, but this is so brilliant. I love your framework. When you mention about getting them into the learning zone and the cycle of implement confidence, I think a lot of coaches and a lot of coaching programs self-sabotage somehow. And instead of building agency and confidence, they build dependence and they build deficit so that the client can't take any action or make any decision, no matter how minor, without, I got to check with my coach. I got to call Rachael. I got to make sure this is the right decision. I'm going to book a call with Coach A, and then I'm in the same program. I'm going to call Coach B. I'm going to bring this to office hours. I'm going to get a coaching clinic on this, and I'm going to send an email and post in the Facebook group. And it's the same damn question. And we have crippled them. And it's the opposite effect of what you're talking about. How do we escape that doom loop?
Oh my gosh. This is a big one. And it's a big pet peeve of mine, because my goal as a coach is not to be the end all be all for someone else. Like, honestly, I've got 3 children and a husband. That is enough. I do not need to be anyone else's lifeline right now. So my goal is always to empower my clients with a set of tools that they can reach for at any time. I want them to understand how to resource themselves. So a big part of this for me is understanding what are the tools that they need to have in their little toolbox, and we reinforce it again and again and again. So for example, we talk a lot about planning. We have our 90-day planning at the CEO retreat. We have a planner they use that we've developed and we ship out to them that we encourage them to use. Every Monday, we start in community with what we call our CEO date, where we're setting up our week for success. We're using a checklist we've developed. And by hosting it as part of our community, they're building the habit together along with us. And then if they leave us or if they don't show up for that live call, they've done enough reps that they know how to do it on their own, right? And I think this is a lot of it, is understanding that the first few times somebody tries something, they're going to be uncertain. They're going to be nervous. So sometimes you have to give them like those little bumpers in bowling. You have to give them some little guardrails so that they can practice together, so they can practice those skills. So we give them tools for that. We've even developed, how do you create your own decision-making framework, and teach them, how do you apply this to your specific business? Because I'm not the CEO of their business. I'm not the one that should be making decisions. They need to learn how to make decisions. So when they come to us, I don't give them answers that are, decision-making questions. I coach them on how to make the decision for themselves using the framework that we've helped them develop based on their circumstances, their values, their specific needs.
Super, super important, because that disempowering cycle that coaching and some coaches have, and I think some even do it intentionally, which is really unethical, but it's just frustrating. It's just frustrating when people come to you with smaller and smaller and smaller decisions that they feel they need help with. It's like, no, I'm here to empower you. I'm not here to disempower you or to take away your decision-making ability.
Yeah.
I love that you give them decision-making criteria. So you train, it's kind of a meta training, right? It's not here's the right decision to make. It's here's how to make any decision right. Here's how to make any decision right. I'm going to teach you and train you on that. And I'm going to remind you of that teaching and training and tools and what's in the portal and the frameworks and what you decided were your decision-making criteria. I'm going to hand it back to you. And then you make the decision based on your criteria.
Exactly. It's about self-trust. And this is one of the biggest things. If you're working with small business owners and they are terrified of failure, they're terrified of messing something up, they're terrified of somebody getting mad at them. This is a big one for women. We tend to be people pleasers to the core. And so we have to give them those little first steps to help them start to understand that, like, if one person gets mad at you, it's not the end of the world. It really isn't. And I will tell people, even Jesus Christ had haters.
It's true.
Literally. So why are the rest of us trying to be perfect all the time? It's not possible. So we might as well let go of that limiting belief and realize that, you know what, even if you make the wrong decision, you will survive it. You will get more data. And that data, that information is what's going to help you figure out, okay, how do I course correct and make the right decision moving forward?
Racheal Cook, so smart, so valuable. I know people are going to want to get connected and stay connected to more Racheal brilliance. Where can we send people? What resources and links should be in the show notes?
Well, if you're a podcast listener, head over to my podcast, Promote Yourself to CEO. You will find tons of episodes there, a lot of different themes that we dive into. Would love to have you listen in and then come let me know your thoughts, your takeaways. I am most active over on Instagram, so you can find me there at Rachael.cook. I'm always in the DMs, so happy to chat there. And then, of course, if you go to my website, theceocollective.com/hello, we have a landing page just for our podcast listeners where you can go check out the most updated recent live trainings that I've been doing and get access to those as well.
So good, so good, so good. And all of those are going to be in the show notes directly under this episode at thesellingshow.com. Rachael, thank you so much for all of these value bombs. Folks, you're going to want to rewind. You're going to want to re-listen. If you're in your car, just hit it again. If you're on the treadmill, hit it again. You need to listen to this show, this particular episode, 2 or 3 times until it's burned into your brain cells. And then please connect with Rachael and please pop over to theceocollective.com where all the good stuff is waiting for you. Theceocollective.com/hello to be specific. And Rachael, thank you again so much.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.